Yakima County Board of Health won't commit to following state federal laws. County Commissioner and board member Amanda McKinney joins us on the phone right now. Good morning, Madam Commissioner. How are you?
Well, good morning, and good morning, Richard.
Thank you. Good morning.
So here we are. There's your pretty face on a photo, causing trouble. What's going on?
Causing trouble. No, I think it's standing up for what is right, because we're not a rubber stamp. And, I brought up some points last night, which were, and I will say that full motion also said that we would always do what was in the interest of public health, according to our local officer and staff. And what I will say is that, so much of what's in the best interest for public health, it's subjective. And the point I brought up yesterday, because Director Fresco continues to say we need to do everything and be a rubber stamp to what's happening in Olympia, and that doing anything contrary was going against public health. And I said, there are 11 states in our union who determined that they weren't going to follow the guidelines and ever even have lockdowns or mandates. And furthermore, 18 states decided to buck the odds before the CDC and drop their masks and mandates as well. So what were those? There clearly are like-minded people out there who can discern and be free thinkers and say, you know what, this is great. This is the guidelines that you're giving us, but we're going to do us. We know our community. We've decided that locally we know what's best for us. And so the only way that happened is because there were people in small municipalities like Yakima who were on their health boards, who had local health officers, who said, we aren't going to do it that way. We're going to do it the way we think it works best for our community. So this idea that we have to follow in lockstep everything that the CDC says, or a governor who clearly has had, with Oregon and Washington and California, the most strict guidelines than other places in the United States, why do we have to go along to get along? We can do what's best for Yakima, and I think our people can be trusted to do what's best for them and have consideration for their family and their neighbors and move on with life with caution during this pandemic.
100%, Amanda, 100%. We elect you to fight for us, and that means when people like the governor and predominantly West Side lawmakers want to give the governor the power to do what he does, we want you to look for every opportunity to push back. And you have shown all kinds of leadership in that regard. And that's our expectation. Now, as far as the health officer goes, we also would expect him. Who pays him? We do, right? He's not an acolyte.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right.
He's not an acolyte of the governor. He works for us. Now, he's got a medical position to uphold. I get that. But I would expect him to be on our team. And if you're urging him to do something, I would expect that he would explain happily why it is that he can or can't do it, but still be on our team and maybe suggest other avenues and other approaches rather than go, it's the law, it's the law, it's the law, and so I'm going to follow the law because it's the law. That's not what we expect, and it's not what we need. And I totally support the position that you and the other commissioners were taking that ultimately voted against this motion. Good on you.
Well, myself and Commissioner Lindy voted against it, and thankfully Mayor Byers and Dr. Atterbury were on board as well. But we really need to have our eyes wide open here, because we will see. I imagine the reason why I think this is all of this, I'm very passionate about this, is because whatever we do and whatever we tolerate, we are setting a precedent for the next time this happens. Because like anything, we've gotten into a routine. This is our expectation. And the next time this happens, we're going to go right back to where we left off. And we still right now have so many things that don't follow the science with regard to our children. And I will say that just because subjectively, the only reason why we're in this position in the state of Washington is because our state legislature felt compelled to give up their voice and hand over all authority and power subjectively, again, under a vague law that says the governor may call a state of emergency, and it is so vague that we still have not had successful injunctions or lawsuits, because no one has been able to convince our far left-leaning court system that we aren't still in an emergency. And so other states, though, have been able to figure it out. Why is that? Well, it's because their legislature didn't give up their authority. And so that's the only reason why the science hasn't changed. And I said this last night. The reason why other states have done things differently, it's not the science. It's who's reviewing the science. And it's who is deciding and setting the policies based off their consumption of all the science and data and making a decision. It's based off a different willingness to allow people to have freedom to choose for themselves. That's it. The science isn't different in Washington than it is in New York. It's not different in Minnesota. It's not different in Florida or Arizona. The science is the science. And they've been able to say, you know what, we're willing to allow our people the freedom to choose to do the things that they feel compelled to protect themselves from this virus while they go about their daily lives.
Yeah, I mean, you can't make a stronger argument than that. You step over a state line and all of a sudden we treat everything differently because of the people that are doing the review and make the decisions. That's ridiculous. And you're right. As Scott Brumbeck so accurately pointed out, as the executive, Inslee's job is to carry out the will of the legislature. And the legislature gave him open-ended, in perpetuity type authority, and that was wrong and a mistake. And we couldn't get it corrected in the last session. And at some point, we're going to have to find a way to push that through so that at some point an emergency declaration no longer applies to our circumstances on the ground, and some input from folks can happen. So how, can I ask you this? How are you guys getting along? Not that that's a key factor to make things work, but is there 4-3 votes generating a workable environment where you guys can still, get stuff done, or what do you think?
I would say that anyone who wants to watch the movies, sometimes it feels like a bad movie. Anyone who wants to watch, you can certainly watch the recorded health board meetings. I do have concern. The margin is slim. Sometimes it's 5-2, sometimes it's 4-3. I would say my greatest concern is that the health board had our first interview yesterday, and we'll have 2 more interviews today for our new health officer. And as we've seen, and as we expect, we have the opportunity here to have a new health officer, and we have 3 local candidates. And we have to decide, do we want someone who wants to be in lockstep and takes all their cues from the governor and our State Department of Health and the CDC, or do we want to have someone who's a free thinker who can acknowledge that there is, for instance, in this situation, obviously a virus that spreads among the public, and it's of concern and has sent people to the hospital, and some have died, and we do recognize and acknowledge that. But where is the balance? And as you stated earlier, it is okay for someone to say, which is what I've asked of Dr. Yuka, I don't agree with this because this is a statewide interpretation, and he will not do so. He will not cite any science or data that shows me or anyone else, because I know a lot of other people have asked him as well. No response to me other than this is just what we need to do because this is what the state wants us to do. And as soon as we can vaccinate all the children, then they can take their masks off. And I'm sorry, that is a very small thought process to say that we're only going to get out of this if we do this thing. We're going to get out of this as soon as we have a decision on a statewide level to do things differently. And other states, again, have figured this out. And I'm so compelled to have people pull your head up, look around, talk to your friends and family and coworkers and neighbors who are in different parts of the state and ask them, how is it where you live? How is it when your child goes to school? What's your summer plans? Because the more we're able to have people understand, I mean, we are under cloud. There are groups of people in our state and in Yakima who believe that this is something that we absolutely still should be under lockdown for. And why? It's because they want to set a precedent for the future. And if you can't see the obvious logical next steps, then that's where we have to be concerned, because he has already said, our governor has already said that climate change, which is the same, I think Biden said this yesterday, the number one threat to public health in the state of Washington, according to our governor, isn't even COVID. It's climate change.
So,
and if he's already saying that is our public health emergency, then he's going to open it up for emergency orders to circumvent the legislation like he's done for COVID and create new policies to fight and beat climate change.
Yeah, that makes
That's
sense.
the next step.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that's good to guard against. Richard, you got a question for the commissioner?
I do. Actually, I have two questions, Amanda. The first one, like it or not, you've sort of become the point person or the face
Lightning
of
rod.
this tug of war with the health board. Did you anticipate that this issue with the health board when you were running or when you were first in the position? Did you anticipate this at all? Was it on your radar? And my second question is about the other motion that was proposed and passed about not delaying the passing of motions that are non-emergency related, where you were the only dissenting vote.
Yeah, so to your first question, when I was running, I was very aware of the authority that the health board locally has by statute that had not yet been exercised. So the staff and the health officer at our health district all last year were calling all the shots. And the health board, by statute, the health board sets the policies for the staff to administer. Very clear. And that's down to policies like, are we going to do a needle exchange? Are we going to go in and talk to people about planned pregnancies? Are we going to talk to people? Well, the latest example, the staff felt compelled to take it upon themselves to create a vaccine competition with our area youth and minors inside of high school. And that, to me, is setting a policy. If you're going to market or educate regarding a topic like that, when especially in this case requires parental consent, the board needs to be involved in those discussions. And I brought it up in the meeting when they said they were going to do that, and I said, whoa, we need to talk about this as a board and decide whether or not we're going to do that or not. We want to see material. And what did they do? They sent us the material one evening and turned around and started the competition the next day. So directly against what the board clearly wanted to do, and that is a problem. So I did not anticipate that there would be so much direct resistance, because I will tell you, there's great people who work on the staff at the health district, but if you listen to the meetings, the most vocal, and our director, Mr. Fresco, are constantly beating the drumbeat of it's all in the name of public health. You must give up all these personal rights and freedoms to choose because it's all in the name of public health. But that's subjective. And that is a very narrow view coming from a small group of people who believe that they'll put you in a bubble. They're the ones who are supportive of the lockdowns. They're supportive of, still children wearing masks at this point. Well, it's a very narrow view. So I didn't expect it to be this.
Amanda, let me intercept for just a second, and then you can get back to that other question. At the very beginning of all of this, and we were at the point where we were wondering if the lockdown was going to be worth the economic impact. It was very clear that people who have a medical specialty, they basically, as you say, have a narrow view. Everything is seen through the prism or the lens, if you will, of the health mindset, and the goal there being, perfection or as close to getting to that as possible. The other side is the economics. At what cost does all of this occur? And we've had many a conversation nationally about can we afford the cure? Can we afford the hit to the economy? And people who were recommending the medical procedures were simply from a medical perspective. They did not have either the interest or the ability to calculate in all of the rest that goes into what happens to a society when you shut part of it down for a medical reason. And so, I get it. You're the medical expert. You should be part of the equation. You shouldn't be the sole arbiter of the decisions that we make. It's part of the decision, but there's all those other aspects as well. Play your role, but then understand that it is a role and it's not the final decision. Does that make sense? That's what we have you guys for. You get your medical input, you get your health safety input, you get whatever you can get, and then you weigh that all out and make a decision for the greater good of the people, not just from a doctor's point of view only.
Well, even the CDC can. Yes, and I agree. That's what I continue to say. I liken the CDC to your own personal physician. You walk into the doctor, And he says, golly, you're getting up there, so that means that you got to start walking. You need to start doing at least a couple miles a day. You got to lay off the, the beer and pizza, and you need to start taking care of yourself if you want to live longer. And you walk out of the doctor's office and you say, well, there's no way I'm going to give up the beer and pizza, but maybe I'll walk a little more. You get to subjectively decide what risk, where you want to go with this. So you've been given health advice, and you have to determine for yourself, because you know what? You have beer and pizza every Friday night with your family, and it's a tradition, and you don't want to give that up. So you're not going to give it up because you've decided that you would rather spend time with your family doing something you enjoy than doing what was best for your personal health. We all, and someone would say, okay, well, I'm going to have cauliflower crust, but I'm still keeping it. We all have different choices to make, and that's the role of your doctor. It's the role of the CDC. It's the role of the health officer. We have to be, it's so hard to pinpoint what's best for the good of the order, for greater good for public health, because there is no one answer for everyone, because what's good for me is not good for you, because it's completely subjective and very personal. Richard, to your question about the motion, oh my gosh, I'm the only one who voted against it because it didn't make any sense, and we violated it at the end of the meeting. So Commissioner Anderson made a motion. He had it on the agenda that he wanted it so that if something new business came up, that you would not be able to take action as a board. It would have to be tabled until the next meeting. And I argued that obviously that would restrict our abilities to take action as a board unnecessarily. And I stated that his argument was, well, if we bring new things up and then there's a vote on it and we don't have enough information, then people are going to be uncomfortable making a decision without, knowing all the facts. I said, okay, well, Robert's Rules allows for that. That's why we have these rules. If there are enough board members who don't feel that they have enough information to make a decision, then the board as a majority tables it. That's it. And he said, well, no, it's just I just want to make sure we're only doing normal business. And I said, so what happens if there's an emergency? And then the statement was, well, if it's an emergency, then we can do it. And I said, okay, describe normal. Well, normal is normal. I said, well, describe an emergency. Well, you know what I mean. And you have to go back and watch it. But the point being, again, subjective. And there are already rules. So it was a nonsensical motion, and what ended up passing is that it ended up passing, and then at the very end of the meeting, Director Fresco brings up new business that wasn't on the agenda, which was he wanted to make sure that staff had input on who we hire as the health board officer, not on the agenda, and they made a motion. Well, we need to decide on this because we've got our interviews, we've got to make a decision, we have to do this now before our next meeting. And so they made a motion, and I said, well, wait a second, was this normal?
Sounds like an
you
emergency.
can see everyone's faces. Or is this an emergency?
Well, that's just it. Once you put that in place, somebody has to sit there and with a mindset of listening for, oh, are we doing it again? I mean, there's got to be a watchdog on your own system when you do it the way that it's now been changed to. We're out of time, Amanda. We got to scoot, but thank you so much for your input. And the clarity here. We talked about this at length yesterday. I wrote a blog about it. My expectation, and most of the people that I know expect you guys to fight on our behalf, to push back, to just don't take what's shoveled our way, to look for compromise, to look for ways to have our thoughts on it incorporated. And the people that I talk to want our health director to be on our side as much as possible, rather than saying, hey, it's the law, the governor said it, we're doing it. I would like to see those people, whoever gets the job, work as a team to talk about other options that might exist and what have you. And in the end, we may have to do what the governor says, but it won't be because we didn't examine every other possibility. That's the mindset that I want working for me as hired by you guys. So to the extent that we can get there, I'm hoping. Amanda, thanks.
Yeah, email your health board members. Email your health board members and let them know that in the hiring and their consideration of the health officer, they want the number one priority is that someone is willing to be a free thinker who can assess what's best for the local community. That's what we want.